Bye-bye.
No question. Oh,
Thank you again.
so Misimcha. So, last week uh, we ended off more or less the class with the question of how how do we pray properly when we're praying. Let's put it this way: through the intermediary of the tzaddik, or we go to tzaddik's grave, or we want the tzaddik to pray for us. So,
No, you changed that. We still are discussing all those. We were still talking about that.
okay, wonderful. So the way that I said last time was that a person should always pray to Hashem and say that Hashem should answer me bizchut, or in the merit of the tzaddik that is here, or in the merit of the tzaddik that you're lighting the candle for, whatever. And the question that was asked: can I ask this tzaddik, say to, let's say, Rabbi Meir, please go to Hakadosh Baruch Hu to pray for my behalf, or what you mentioned the other time was you said like you ask your grandmother to intervene on behalf of the family for shalom, whatever it is. So that manner, having looked into it, it's permitted. It's permitted because obviously we, at the end of the day, we are asking Hashem, meaning we're not asking from the person that was niftal to do anything. We're asking them to pray to Hashem for us, which is permitted. Although obviously the first way is preferred, meaning the way that is preferred is always to ask Hashem directly and then ask for the merit of the tzaddik to also be for us. But the other way is also permitted. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Bezat Hashem. So we're going to continue back with the topics of Menachet Shabbat, Bezat Hashem, and the next in the line, which is going to finish off the topic of Borer more or less, is Melaked. Okay, so we had Zoreh. That's how we started off. We said that there's three menachot that more or less fit in the category of borer. The first one was zoreh. Second one was borer. We stopped with tochen, and that's what we discussed last class. And then this class is going to be melaked. So zoreh, we said, is separating, but is separating through the wind, meaning we allow the wind to do the separation. And we spoke about also how if you do it with your mouth, it would be considered the same thing, meaning if you had a bunch of things in your hand and you want to blow with your mouth to take all the bad stuff away, that's zoreh. Borer, we obviously know what borer is. We said if a person is doing it with their hands. And meraked, finally, is doing borer, but with a utensil. Okay, so the picture that they normally give for melaked is obviously using a sifter. When a person uses a sifter, and that's actually what they were doing in the Mishkan, right? So when you're using a sifter, that would be considered melaked. So in the Mishkan, what they would do is they would obviously take the grain, and they would clean it. They would sift it to be able to clean it. Now, when it gets to melaked, there are few practical applications that a person can come across on Shabbat. Many people have, I wouldn't say custom, it's just like a practice, right? Many people that they like to put salt inside a salt shaker. The reason for this is, again, that's not really halacha, it's more science, because we know that if salt gets a little bit moist, then it turns into clumps, and then it's going to be hard for it to exit the salt shaker. So what people do is they put grains of salt, which are going to absorb any moisture, and
rice inside of the salt shaker, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I say something else?
It's salt. That's why I like it. But I was, but it's yeah. Okay.
It's in the salt shaker. They put it there so that when they use the salt shaker, it should come out. It should always come out, as opposed to if you just leave it there like that, and then it comes into contact with moisture. So then the salt becomes clumpy, and then it won't be able to exit the salt shaker. So there are Ashkenaz opinions that are strict with this, meaning they say that if you have salt inside the salt shaker, you would not be able to, if you have rice mixed together with the salt in the salt shaker, you would not be allowed to use this this salt shaker on Shabbat, because when you're pouring out the salt, you're sifting the salt from the rice, and that wouldn't be allowed. However, for Sfaradim, it is not an issue, because once again, when we're doing something like that, it is not for the purpose of separating. It is it's even if the salt comes out, it's not it's not something that's going to ruin the food, number one, and it's not being intended to have the separation going on. Another similar thing would be with tea bags and tea. So, Bezat Hashem, as we go along, maybe it's going to be even next class, but when we're going to talk about bishul, cooking, right? So there's a very big difference in the way Ashkenazim make tea and the Sfaradim make tea. Leaving that aside, but in terms of using tea bags on Shabbat, so there are Ashkenazim that are strict, and they say that when you use a tea bag on Shabbat, then you have to take out the tea bag from the tea together with a spoon. You have to take a tea bag together with the spoon. Why? Because if you're just taking out the tea bag, what's happening is you're sifting the water through the tea bag, meaning there's water in the tea bag, and now when you're removing it, so what's happening is you're taking out all the liquid from the tea bag, and you're now creating like a sort of sieve, which would be asul. For the Sfaradim, once again, there is no issue with that. And even for Ashkenazim, there are some that allow it, some that don't allow it. And the ones that don't allow it say that you would have to take it out with a spoon. When you take it out with a spoon, what that accomplishes is that you're now removing it together with the liquid. You're not separating anything. There's still parts. There's still something there, and this brings up the famous discussion of whether or not there is something like there's borer when we're talking about liquids, meaning if you have something that is floating on top of a liquid, can you remove it? So many poskim allow you to remove it as is, meaning you don't have to like do anything crazy, and you can just remove whatever's floating on top of the liquid, as long as it's a solid, of course. You can remove it and you don't have to worry about anything. And other poskim say it would be better to use a spoon to take some of the liquid together with whatever is floating, so that you're not fully separating, because if it's still all part together, so then you didn't really separate anything.
Rabbi, I think someone has a question.
Yeah, no, when we make tea with lemon, sometimes grain of the lemon fall in the tea, so then we're allowed to take the grain of the lemon out.
So very good. The tea with
should be bishul. It's considered as maybe there is a way to do the tea when we do lemon, no? Can you explain the whole process of how we make tea like on Shabbat?
Okay, so that was probably going to be under bishul, but we can discuss it now. It's not a problem. Just to address what you said right now, it's very, very important to know that when you're squeezing lemon, right? We talked about this previously, that if you're squeezing a lemon, it has to be on food. It cannot be on liquid.
So meaning if you're a piece of lemon and I drop it on the tea, I cut a small piece of lemon and I drop it into the tea.
Okay, that's not a problem. Yes, that is not a problem. So and if there were, sorry?
And the few of the grain of the lemon sometimes floats. Yeah.
So that's exactly what we were discussing right now, where there are some poskim that they allow you to take it out as it is, because why? It's solid and liquid. Solid and liquid don't mix, meaning they are already considered to be separated. It's very noticeable how they are. They're very, they're apart. So then if you take it out, there wouldn't be a problem. And other poskim say, listen, it's better if you take a spoon and you remove some of the liquid together with it. So when you're doing that, you're not really separating anything, because since you're taking part of the good together with the bad, and it's still the good and the bad together, you're not doing any separation. Okay, so that's in terms of that. Now, you brought up, we can discuss how to make tea on Shabbat. So there's a big difference between the Ashkenazim and the Sfaradim when it comes to this, and I'll discuss the Ashkenazim first because it's a little bit more complicated. For the Ashkenazim, they hold that a tea bag, okay, is going to be considered something that's called kaleh habishul, things that are easily cooked. And things that are easily cooked, according to Ashkenazim, even if it's in the second cup, it's still not able to be cooked. Okay. Now, if you would be doing that on Shabbat, you would be considered cooking on Shabbat. Now, there's other poskim that they say, like, listen, if you're using a third cup, so you have the first utensil is the hot water urn, then you have the cup that you're pouring into, okay, and then you have a second cup. Sorry, that would be kli shlishi. Okay, so in that case, the Ashkenazim would say, like a lot of Ashkenazim, they say if it's already kli shlishi, then it's okay. But to avoid all those problems, what many Ashkenazim do, they prepare a tea concentrate before Shabbat. How do they do that? They take, let's say, 3-4 bags of tea. Before Shabbat, they put it in a cup of hot water. Okay, so now it's all the tea bags are seeping into that cup of water. And of course, it's going to be very, very concentrated. Okay, so then what they do is every time they want to make tea, they take a little bit of that concentrate, they put it into a cup, they pour hot water onto it. Now, again, when they're pouring hot water onto it, they're not pouring directly from the kettle. They're taking another cup and then pouring hot water onto that. Okay, so that's how Ashkenazim would make tea on Shabbat in order to avoid problems of bishul. Okay.
You cannot do the opposite. To put these concentrate things on the second cup of hot water.
Yes, it is possible to do that as well. The reason why I said to put the concentrate first and then the water is because, again, there are some opinions. It doesn't mean that you have to follow this, but there are some opinions that say that when it gets to liquids, if you're going to pour the concentrate into the water, you're coloring the water. So then it wouldn't be a lot. Again, we don't have to go by that opinion, but if we can avoid it, then why not? I mean, it doesn't really make a difference, right? So if we can do it and make everyone happy, why not? And again, like I said, it doesn't really make a difference, but if you want to do it the other way, that's also okay, because we say that there's no coloring when it comes to foods. Okay? That's sorry?
For the Sephardim.
Very good. For the Sfaradim. Now, normally what the Sfaradim, they say is that when you're using a tea bag, what you would have to do is you would have to use it kli sheni. Kli sheni is when you have the hot water urn, like we said, that's going to be kli rishon. And then the second one is going to be kli sheni. Okay, so when you pour from the hot water urn into a cup, that cup is now kli sheni, and then you add the tea bag to that cup to that cup that you filled up. If you add the tea bag to the cup, not if you have the tea bag already in the cup and then you pour it directly on it. That's how most Sfaradim say that you should do it. For the Moroccans, and technically, also you could say other Sfaradim as well, but the Moroccans, it was Rav Mesas that came up with this, and he said that you don't even need that. If you want, you can pour directly onto the tea bag from the hot water urn. And the reason for that is because tea bags are already consisting of cooked tea leaves or dried tea leaves, meaning these tea leaves, they go through a heating process, they go through like a kind of cooking process, okay, before they come into your tea bag. So that means when they're in the tea bag, they're already considered to be cooked. And for Sfaradim, there is no problem of cooking after cooking, meaning if something was already cooked, we were able to recook it, quote unquote, on Shabbat. Okay. So obviously you wouldn't be able to light a fire or something like that, but there's no problem with that. And then when you're going to be pouring directly onto the tea bag, so since it was already cooked, even if you're technically cooking it again, there's no problem because it was already cooked. Ashkenazim don't hold like that. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to talk about that more, that concept more when we get to Bishul.
Can I ask something, please?
Be'ezrat Hashem.
I understood well because I used to do it differently. I used to do it more machmir. I used to put water on the cup, pour it to another cup, and then put the tea bag, or pouring it to the tea bag on the tea bag, but after already pour it from one cup to the other. So this is what right now I understand from the rabbi. I can just put water and put the tea bag in the water.
If you're Sephardic.
Yeah,
Very good. That's for Sephardic. For Ashkenaz, if they don't do the concentrate, like I said, that's how they would have to do it.
They need to do kli shlishi.
The Ashkenaz.
For the Ashkenazim, yes.
This is a different.
If they don't do the concentrate before, that's the only way that they would be allowed to do it, not kli sheni.
But if I already moved the water to another cup, yeah, can I pour it on the tea bag?
Yeah, I mean, even Ashkenazim can do that. Because, again, the hot water urn is going to be considered kli rishon.
Yeah.
Okay? That, for sure, we can't play around with. When we take water from that urn and we have it now in another cup, that is considered to be kli sheni, the second cup, okay, the second utensil. When the water is in that second utensil, according to Sfaradim, it doesn't cook at all. Okay, it doesn't cook at all, which means that if I put the tea bag directly there, there's no problem. For Ashkenazim, on the other hand, if I put the tea bag into that second cup, there's still a problem of bishul. So they would have to wait till the third cup, or the second cup technically, to be able to put the tea bag, to be able to add the tea bag.
If it's the third cup, if it's kli shlishi?
Yeah.
Yes.
If it's kli shlishi, can you put the tea bag inside it?
No, if I
No.
can put
Can
the
you
tea bag
pour
before.
on top? On
Can I
kli shlishi?
pour on top of the tea bag if it's kli shlishi for Ashkenazim?
For Sephardim.
Ashkenazim.
No, I'm
For
Sephardi, but
Sfaradim, you can pour the water on it. Yes.
if I have guests, huh?
If you have guests. So yes, again, if you're doing it for yourself as well, you can do it, no problem.
I can do
Because
it.
you're the one that's doing it, and if it's something that's permitted for you, they can benefit from it afterwards, especially if you're doing it for yourself first.
Okay.
Good.
Oh, this is a good thing to know.
Yeah, it's very good thing to know.
For all
For
that serve
Pesach, for
tea.
Kitniot also?
No, but my question is, am I allowed for Ashkenazim? Let's say I'm Ashkenazi. Am I allowed to pour the second cup of water on the tea bag that is in the cup? Or I need to put the water first and then the tea bag?
It would be better to put the water first and then the tea bag, but it's also okay if you do the other way.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, can I just have a very important call. Can I join back in like 5 minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, sorry. I'll join right back after. Sorry.
Thank you. Then we'll talk about the
Pause.
lemon. The lemon and the mint.
Like the record. Thank you so much.
Okay, no problem. So that's what we were discussing before. We were discussing about the how to make the tea, right? And we spoke about that some Ashkenazim are strict that when they're removing tea bags from water on Shabbat, that they should do it with a spoon to be able to remove some of the liquid together with it. Now, regardless of Ashkenazim or Sfaradim, we have to be careful not to squeeze the tea bag. Like some people like to squeeze all the liquid in the tea bag to make it like a stronger concentrate. You would not be allowed to do that. You would not be allowed to do that on Shabbat. Something else that comes up, I'm sure, in regards to meraked, sifting, would be the filter that's in the sink. So, most sinks, they have like a small metal type of filter that you place over the sinkhole to be able to filter out any of the dirt or things that come into the sink that they shouldn't go down the drain and then eventually clog the drain. So while there is no problem, let's put it that way, if the filter is already there, and then you add on things to the sink, and then it happens like by the way, where it ends up separating. However, if there's water already in the sink and there's dirt already in the sink, and then you want to place the filter in order to make sure that the pieces don't go down, sorry, that is when it would be a sul, and that is when it would be considered a pure sifting. So if you want to make sure that if you want to have the filter there, right, that small metal piece that goes on, you'd be able to do so, but as long as it's there before anything else goes into the sink, meaning before it can't be full of dirt and all that, and that's when you put in the filter. Okay, so that's it for melaked. Okay, now the next melacha, this is actually there's a lot of things to talk about. I don't know if we're going to get to them all, but the next melacha is the melacha of lash, kneading. Okay, the definition of lash, kneading, is when you combine a liquid and something solid and particles, and it's now going to form like a paste-like consistency. So a perfect example of what wouldn't be lash would be, for example, Play-Doh. Okay, Play-Doh, when you want to knead Play-Doh, there's no liquid being involved, meaning it's the Play-Doh itself and you're just mushing it. Now, it's, of course, you're not allowed to play with Play-Doh on Shabbat for other reasons, right? It's smearing, it's building, sometimes it can even be considered writing, but the point is that it's not considered lash, it's not considered kneading, even if you're playing around with the shape and you're actually doing the motions of kneading, because there is no liquid involved. You're kneading it with its own thing, and then that wouldn't be considered under lash. The things that come up when we're dealing with lash are examples of making, for example, mashed potato mix. Okay, oatmeal, making a tuna salad, an egg salad, even making tahina on Shabbat. All those things can fit under the category of lash, and a person has to be careful with what they're doing and how they do it in order to avoid that problem. So there are different steps. There are different steps when it comes to lash. The first one is if you're making it and it comes out to be a thick consistency. What does that mean? It's, for example, when you're adding mayonnaise to the tuna. Okay, now a lot of people what they do is they put a little bit of mayonnaise and they have a lot of tuna. So what ends up happening is when you're doing something like that, it becomes very thick. The same thing if you put only a little bit of water to oatmeal. Oatmeal, again, we're not talking about right now the problems of bishur. Be'ezrat Hashem, when we get to bishur, we're gonna talk about that. But in terms of the actual act of adding the water to the oatmeal and mixing it afterwards, there would be a problem of lash, yes, if it remains a thick consistency. So what's important to know is that you always have to make sure that it remains a liquid like a liquid-like or a very loose type of consistency. Okay. And the next category we can say is if it's sorry.
Can we ask some question about that?
I didn't say we're allowed to make a tuna with mayonnaise or tahini, or I didn't understand if we allow or not.
So again, I was gonna get to that, but what I was discussing right now were three possibilities, let's say, or three levels of what could be lash, and then we're going to talk about how to avoid those levels. So the first level, like I was saying, was if it's going to be a thick consistency, like if you're only adding a little bit of mayonnaise, or if you're only adding a little bit of hot water, a little bit of, okay, let's call it water to the oatmeal. Okay, when you do that and it remains a thick consistency, that is for sure not allowed. Okay, that is for sure not allowed. You would not be allowed to do that on Shabbat, because that would be considered avlash. The next level is if it is.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. Well,
Yeah.
can we ask you a question regarding that? So if
Yeah.
we're adding just a little bit of
For sure.
mayonnaise or a little bit, for instance, like you have mashed potato and you add a little bit of water because it's too thick, you're not allowed to.
So again, if you're going to be adding the water and it's going to remain thick, then it's a problem. Because again, if it still says thick, okay, then you're in a problem of lash. Okay, when you make it into, and that's the next level, right, that we were talking about. When you make it into the next level where it's a bit, let's say, a bit watery, or a bit more loose, it's still going to be like a little bit thick, but it's not going to be thick. That's where there's what to talk about. And then the third level is if it remains completely liquid. So for example, um you have adding sugar to hot water, or adding even like Kool-Aid to water and mixing it in, right? So you're mixing in something that's solid together with something that's a liquid, right? So that might be considered lash. However, since it's being completely dissolved and the whole thing remains as a liquid, so then there's no problem with that whatsoever. So like I said, you can add in sugar, you can add in coffee grains, you can add in a Kool-Aid mix, all those things you can add to water and mix it even, and there would be no problem. There would no problem of lash.
Wait, I have a question. The tuna and all the stuff that you want to make it loose. So let's say if I take a spoon of my tuna salad and it slips out of the spoon, is that considered, you know?
Yes, that would be considered, um that would be considered like a loose consistency, obviously. Okay, if it's like a little bit, like if it pours easily, right? Then that's going to be considered a loose consistency.
Really doesn't
That's
work.
for
You make a tuna
sorry.
Oh, but if, for instance, like it happens to Hansia, it happened to me so many times that I have my egg salad, but maybe like it became very thick
thick.
and I add a little bit of mayonnaise. I never thought that would be an issue.
Again, sorry. What was that last one?
The
When we
salad
have,
is
for
ready.
instance, like the salad is ready, my egg salad is ready. But it's thick. Honestly, I'm gonna tell you why. I'm not the one who makes the egg salad. I have two kids who love the egg salad and who want to make, but sometimes it's not to the taste of, it's like very, very thick. So I add mayo before I serve it. And this
Okay.
is,
So again, what we have to like we have to understand that there's a difference when it becomes, when it's, let's put it, when it's something that becomes like a paste or a mixture, or a batter, let's call it like that. And then you have also salads that you're going to dress with mayonnaise, right? You're going to put a mayonnaise salad dressing. When you have foods that they're completely solid, meaning you're having a cabbage salad. Okay, many people like to use mayonnaise dressing for a cabbage salad, and you're mixing it in, and it still remains, I guess you can say, kind of thick. There's no problem with lush in there, because the pieces are, or the solid is not really getting mixed into the salad, and they're not becoming like stuck together with the salad. The problem arises is when it becomes like a, um how do you say, like the mayonnaise is what's holding everything together. Sorry.
Yeah, like a dough. Became like
Very good. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's now turning everything into one thing. So that's for example, you have the oatmeal, right? You have the oatmeal. When you're pouring hot water on the oatmeal, so before you pour the hot water on the oatmeal, what happens is everything, it's like loose pieces. When you pour the hot water onto the oatmeal and you mix it together and you let it dry a little bit, depending on how much water you're putting, right? The pudding can now become kind of like what you were saying before, a dough, right? It becomes like one big thing. And if it becomes thick enough that it remains in that big clump, so that's where you have a problem of lash on Shabbat. Now, what you were saying before was when you're adding mayonnaise to make it, because it was too thick and you're now wanting to make it a bit looser. So it depends on how much mayonnaise and how much looser it's going to be. If it's for the purpose of making it looser, so then yes, that's where it becomes allowed. But it has to also respect the fact that it's going to be considered loose, and it's not going to be considered um now making a batter.
And what about tahini?
Tahina is the same issue. When you're taking the let's say the tahina mix, right? You buy the jar in the store, and then you're adding water, lemon, whatever you want to add to it. So if you were to, it's obviously better to make it before Shabbat, but you're still able to make it on Shabbat. Mechila, if you're going to make it on Shabbat, you just have to make sure that it becomes like watery. It's going to be something that pours very easily. And this is where because we're now talking about the middle category, what you're also going to have to do is you're also going to have to mix it with a shinui. Okay, you're going to have to mix it with some sort of different way than you mix it during the week. So what many people do is when they're mixing the tahina, they do it in a crisscross mixing manner. Meaning, normally what you would take the bowl and you would just beat it like you would beat like eggs, scrambled eggs, or something like that. You just like do circular motion. So now, in order to do a shinui, what you do is you start crisscrossing, like you make lines up and down, side to side, and that's also going to help mix it up. That's going to be a one form of shinui. Um, there are other forms of shinui depending on what it is and depending on how you normally mix throughout the year. There would be, for example, if you normally mix something very, very hard and fast, so now you're able to do it in a slow controlled manner, right? But if it's something that you generally do like that, if you do it in the same way, it's not considered to be shinui. So each um each thing is going to be different depending on what it is, but it's important to know that two conditions have to be met. Number one, the batter that is being made, or whatever it is that's being made, it cannot it cannot remain in a thick consistency. It has to be in a looser consistency. And when you're mixing it, you would have to mix it with a shinui. Okay?
Yes, I just want to return to the oatmeal that when you said that if we're putting hot water, we cannot doing this Shabbat.
So again, I said what I said was I didn't want to get into the problems of bishul. I don't want to get into the problems of bishul yet, or it's very simple.
So
Yeah.
it's
You will teach
Yeah.
me next week, I think.
Yeah,
Oh.
Be'ezrat Hashem, it looks like we're going to be doing it next week if we more or less finish this, and it
Oh,
looks
no,
like the bishul is the next topic.
an order.
So let me go back to the tuna. If the tuna looks solid, is it okay or it's not okay? Because it's not.
So again, it depends on how much. Again, we all know that if you put more mayonnaise, right, it becomes looser. It becomes like more. The more mayonnaise you put, the more watery the tuna is going to be. Now, some people they don't like it like that, but if you were going to do it on Shabbat, you would have to make sure that it would have to be more like it would have to be have a more watery consistency than than just like a little bit of tuna give it a taste. Because if you're going to put only a little bit of mayonnaise, what's going to happen is it's going to turn it into a clump. It's going to turn it into like a type of dough, and that's not allowed on Shabbat. Now, like I said, it's different when you're mixing it into a salad, because a salad is like each piece is on its own. Each piece is separated, and the mayonnaise isn't really turning anything into a mixture.
I usually put the salad cuite with the tuna.
Okay, but so it depends. Does the salad cuite now make the tuna, like, does it hold it together? Does it turn it into like a type of dough? Or is it just like mixing two different foods together? You can also like spread the salad cuite before on the bread and then add tuna onto it. You know, if you were, for example, you were just to add a little bit of harissa or spices to make the tuna a little bit spicy, that wouldn't be a problem, because that's not holding the tuna together. That's not turning the tuna into into like a dough.
Thank you.
Rabbi, I have one more question, please.
Be'ezat Hashem.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, regarding the lemon, I'm going back to the lemon, to the squeezing of the lemon. If I squeeze before Shabbat, I normally try to squeeze before Shabbat all my lemon that I need on a container, and then I just use it to,
To season salad, to make a dressing.
to do like anything that I need, I use that. So I don't squeeze it. So it's okay.
Yeah, there's no problem to put it afterwards. It would be the same thing if you were to buy like, the lemon juice or something like that, and you would use that on Shabbat. You can use that on Shabbat, but it's important to also remember that there's like an order to follow, that when we make a dressing of the salad, that we put that towards the end. So I think what we do is we put the oil first. The oil, the vinegar, the salt, whatever, that comes afterwards. Meaning we have to put the oil first. That's the first step, and then we put the other ingredients, because the oil is what kind of avoids the problem of what we're going to call pickling afterwards. And Be'ezat Hashem, when we come to that halacha, we're gonna see it more.
Can I put oil, lemon, mayonnaise in a small bowl, mix them together, and then pour it to the salad? This is what I do.
Yes, you can do that, but once again, like what we're talking about right now, if you do that, you'd have to make sure that it's a very watery.
Oh, it is always water.
Then yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And lemon, if I want to throw to put lemon juice on my tea, this we'll learn next week, yeah? Because it's bishul.
Yeah, it's bishul. Yeah.
Next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be'ezat Hashem.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay. Now, another thing that we have to be careful of is, for example, if you were to want to make guacamole on Shabbat. Okay. So we spoke about last week about how if you want to mash avocado, you would be allowed to do that, but obviously you have to respect the fact that it's going to be close to the meal when you're going to eat it, and you also have to respect the fact that you have to do it bishinui. You have to mash it with the backside of the fork, the spoon, whatever it is. You have to find some other way that don't normally do throughout throughout the week. You have to respect that when just mashing the avocado. Now, when we're making the guacamole, so what happens is many times you add in also onions, right? Or you add in like garlic, or you add in like other small solids to that
Or eggs.
or or eggs, yeah, whatever it is. Again, but the eggs might be different if they're also already mushed. We're here talking about like if you add in other pieces, other solids to the mixture, you have to make sure that it's not going to be a thick paste, and you have to do it also, like we said, you have to make sure that it's going to be in a, sorry, when you're going to mix it, you're going to mix it in a shinui manner. So instead of mixing it, like we said, like a beating type of motion, circular motion, you would do the same way you would do crisscrosses. Okay, you would go up and down, side to side, make it like that. Okay. Okay. You would be allowed to take a cookies or something like that, and you would not be allowed to crumble them over a salad, right? Some people, or what something maybe a little bit more common would be like breadcrumbs over a salad. So you take the bread, if it's already crunchy, whatever, and you crumble it and put it over the salad. There's no problem of tochen, like we learned last week, because it was already ground. It was already it was already ground once, okay? But you have to be careful. You have to be careful with, once again, the ilvuv, the manner that you mix it. Meaning anything that's going to be turned into a paste, anything that's going to be turned into something that now remains a little bit more solid, okay? When there's a liquid form involved, you're gonna have to be careful to mix it in a shinui, in a different manner than it's usual. Okay. You have over here, if you want to mix granola into a yogurt on Shabbat, okay, you would have to be careful to respect this rule of lush. So if you're only putting in a little bit of the granola, to a lot of yogurt, to give a little flavor, a little taste, it's fine, because nothing is being really like, they're not being mixed together, they're not being attached together. And so, you take a little bit of granola and you're putting it on your spoon or whatever, you even just leave it on the top. That's not a problem. The problem is if you want to put in a lot of granola to a little bit of yogurt, now you're making a paste. Now you're making a dough, and that wouldn't be allowed. Okay. So you would have to be careful what you put first, and you would have to be careful on how you mix it afterwards.
Cereal with milk is okay?
Cereal with milk. So yes, because cereal with milk, you're not turning anything into a paste. There's no sticking being done. Nothing is being stuck together.
Okay.
Okay. So again, the same thing applies to oatmeal, like we were talking about. It also applies to baby food, right? If you're making like the baby food that you mix with water, all those things, you would have to be careful that it should be a little bit of a loose paste. It shouldn't be too solid, okay? And you have to be careful with the way that you are going to mix them together. Okay, so Bezat Hashem, that's I guess we'll stop here so that we can do a little bit of Hilchot Kashrut. All right, so